All right, we are live. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Oracle Inn podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Kevin and Laquan. We have a double header going on today. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Living the dream, living it hard.
Sounds like somebody has a dog going on in the backyard there.
Yeah, that's my roommate's dog. I'll be right back.
Get it.
All good.
Get it.
Might want to mute your mic. We're just going to hear this dog.
Animal abuse is no laughing matter there, Eric.
That is true. All right. God. So at least for those of you joining us on the live segment today, we're going to be doing a double header. I will not be available next weekend. And sometimes, whether it's Kevin or Laquan, we might double it up so that way we can at least cover content for the week. For this week, we're going to be going and we're going to be doing 2 episodes. And we'll be breaking them to 20-minute segments. So we'll be doing 3 segments each, where we'll be starting with a recent event, and then we'll get into a particular topic. And then what we're trying to do is mix it up a little bit. So for the 3rd segment, we're going to try to look at something positive or something fun so we can remind ourselves that life is worth living.
And we don't want y'all to kill yourselves for watching this, you know?
Yeah. You know,
it gets a little heavy.
The world could be a dark place, but there's still light in it. So for recent events that's going on, Kevin, and I guess Laquan will be right back. What are you seeing in the news?
Ooh, water's delicious. I don't know. It's a hard question, right? Because there's so much going on every single day. We're just getting hit with, the damn apocalypse. I know there's been some sex trafficking stuff in the news lately. I think so. For those of you that don't share cell phone accounts with us, we all kind of send each other links for stuff all the time. And again, if you want to get real depressed, just jump in on that. Look at all the nightmares that we're sharing. But yeah, I guess you guys were talking about one that was like 100 people or something, 100 kids rescued or something.
Yeah, there was a story in California, I believe it was like a week and a half ago. It was a statewide sweep. And with that, I believe there was like over 400 people that were actually scooped up, actually perpetrators. And there was 98 children, I guess 98 children and maybe that were rescued through that sweep. So, and I think also, Eric, you were saying that you sent the link too. There was a more recent one, right? Or something like that.
Yeah. So there was one that happened in California, and there was a total of 55 human trafficking victims, including 28 of them who were children. And what was interesting is that a lot of these cases are children who have gone missing. Usually they're somewhere between the ages of 15 to 18, pretty much where sexual maturation occurs. And it's just kind of heartbreaking to see that some of these stings that they set up with these organizations are very sophisticated. So what I also thought was interesting is that there was a news article, a few of them that came out, that was talking about this, saying that, a lot of times when it comes to sex trafficking, you might think that these are from, adolescents that are overseas and they're just more vulnerable when they come to the States, when they said actually the majority of them are right here at home. They've been in orphanages, they're, homeless and down on their luck. And typically they're just looking for somebody who's going to, feel like they can be loved and affectionate towards them. And that's where predators out there will, dangle that carrot out in front of them, and then they get them trapped into this vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So actually I got a couple stats I wanted to jot it down here. So it's from the Polaris Project. They do a lot of stats and track these things. So some key statistics here is, since 2007, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, operated by Polaris, has received reports of over 22,000 sex trafficking cases inside the United States. In 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimated that 1 in 6 endangered runaways reported to them were likely sex trafficking victims. Globally, The International Labor Organization estimates that there are 4.5 million people trapped in forced sexual exploitation globally. And lastly, in 2014, there's a report, the Urban Institute estimated that the underground sex economy ranged from 39.9 million in Denver, Colorado to 290 million in Atlanta, Georgia. So what does
Wow.
that tell you? I mean, if that's not disgusting, I don't know what to tell you. Are you kidding me right now? That's part of people's economy. Now I know when I was in the military, I know like prostitution and things like that were part of certain third world countries' economies. That's just kind of how it was. But you would want to think that we hold ourselves to a higher standard, but these numbers are very alarming.
Yeah, there's so Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore, I think back a while ago, started a nonprofit called Thorn. Website's wearethorn.org, where they're essentially what they're trying to do is pull the technology resources online, that sort of thing, to try and track down this, the dark net of, uh, you know, child sexual exploitation. So they're trying to find the technological advances that can help, help the kids that are affected, but also help track down the people that are doing this. So it's good to see that you have, so some people that are in that celebrity realm actually putting their money where where their mouth is, right, and trying to solve this problem, really being kind of innovative. I mean, if you look at their website, there's, their list of partners and stuff is huge. I mean, they're taking this real seriously. This is what they're trying to do. Last number I saw from this, it was something like, due to their work, they'd rescued like 6,000 kids from, child prostitution and other stuff like that. So it's good, on a positive side, it's good to know people are out there trying to help. But yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. So there was another article that I read that was talking about a Judge John Romero Jr. He's a U.S. judge and a leading child trafficking expert. So apparently he deals a lot with these cases. And he said last year there was about 7,500 trafficking cases that were reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And he said that basically more than 50% of 5,500 people who were sex trafficked in 2016 were below 18 when targeted. And the children are mainly runaways, Native Americans and Alaskan Natives. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex youth are the most vulnerable. So I think it's, and this is something that we've talked about before, and I'm sure we'll dedicate almost a full podcast to this, but I think this is where we need to be careful, and not maybe we who are already more sensitive to this, but shaming, kids who are going through that transition, if they're LGBT, QIA plus. It's just important, I think, to not push kids out, because by marginalizing them, it seems to add to them being, separated from the home and then possibly swept up in this, crazy network that's out there.
Yeah. So another thing too on that is actually two things. So they always say that sex trafficking occurs in a range of venues, including fake massage businesses, via online ads or escort services, in residential brothels, or on the street, or at truck stops, or at hotels and motels. But lastly, I think that one of the biggest points I want to make, I think one of the most important things is that this is an actual industry. Like they actually have studios, distribution. They have people who request this stuff, whether it's overseas or here within the United States. Like I just really want to point that out. Like they have studios, professional equipment. They have equipment operators, somebody who's holding the camera, recording this happening. There's a director, there's a producer, there's a writer, there is distribution companies. There's people who are actually putting this stuff on CDs, DVDs, flash drives to send this to people. There are people requesting these. I don't know how, like I'm real passionate about this stuff, because these kids out there, they don't have anybody to fight for them. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, like Eric was saying, is that they're separated from the home for one reason or another, whether it's domestic violence, or whether they're just misunderstood, they're going through a transition. And there's there's animals out there who are taking advantage of this, and it's it just boggles my mind that there's an industry, an underground industry for this. I mean, the number that I just gave you, 290 or 39.9 million in Colorado, all the way to like $290 million in Atlanta, Georgia, of the economy. Is
Yeah, on that Thorn website, it was saying a pimp can make anywhere between 150,000 to 200,000 per child per year. They have 4 to 6 girls, so you're talking about someone making what, upwards of $1 million a year, doing this.
See, this is where I try to look at the pathology of what is it in society that would not just lead the victim to that path, but then, how does a predator form these thoughts? Like, how do you construct it in your mind that this is okay? Or is it just the rush that it's not, allowed? So it kind of gives you that feeling of like, yeah, I want to do it even that much more, almost like a rebellious type of thing that was never acted out as an adolescent. So instead you punish victims into your adulthood because you're stuck in that. You never got past that and matured.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone. I can't. I don't know. I don't think I'd be able to find the link for it, but they were saying, I forget who it was. Might have been one of you guys. The group that actually goes out and looks for the underage, boys and girls, a lot of times are those high-powered individuals, the megalomaniac CEO kind of guy. The people that feel like they're on top of the world and nobody can touch them and that sort of thing. They're in control of everything and they take it out on kids. That's I don't know. There's yeah.
You think that? Well, here's the thing: we always revere children, right? So anything that you do, in the United States is like women and children off limits, right? That's what you're always taught. Women and children off limits. You never hit a woman. You don't touch a child, whatever it is. But it's just so weird, like that this happens. We just talked about 2 events that happened, right? Where's the media coverage for that? You see what I'm saying? But yeah, here we are talking about the Twitter president all the time. But like, there's kids out there,
real issues.
Yeah, real issues. 98 kids that were rescued. That was, victims of this. Why aren't these people who were picked up as the perpetrators? Why weren't they publicly shamed through the news? Why isn't this a national headline? Look at the stats I just read you. Like, why are we not talking about this in the news? Why is it not news? I don't get that. That's what I guess what bothers me is that it's not national news. You'll hear it, a blip on the local news, but that's it.
Well, I think this is where we just need to do what we're doing, which is trying to bring about these other topics and try to push that into the mainstream in our own way. You guys want to switch up to a different thing? Not to take away from that. It's just I actually think we should come back to that because that needs more time, I think.
Yeah. The one thing, last thing on this that I did want to point out was when you look at the porn industry, the adult entertainment industry, there's actually a story of Tracy Lords, who was in the 80s. I think she was big porn actress. She actually lied and told everyone she was 18 and she was doing all these videos at 15, 16 years old. From all accounts, it seems like it was her. Nobody was forcing her to do it. She went out and did it. Once everyone found out her real age, all of those videos, which people had done assuming that she was of age, I guess either she had a fake ID or nobody checked, but all of that became child porn overnight. And it was interesting, to see that. I mean, it's kind of that murky area when you start getting into the porn industry, though, right? At what point, how, I mean, you're how professional do you really want them all to be? Given that it's you're just having sex on camera and selling videos, making money off of it, and you expect them to be following the law, but it's. I don't know.
I actually have a little bit of background, in that. So I know we'll do this in a future podcast, but I actually had a friend, years back who I used to actually take her to her shoots. It was more of an adult photo and video type thing. She didn't actually do the sex, but I had a chance to actually go to the offices and see how it all happens. It was out in Chatsworth. And so I actually had a chance to see when girls would come in, and I would be sitting in the lobby and I would talk to them and be like, you would never think the girls that was sitting in there. I was like, really? And a lot of them were college students and they just wanted extra money on the side and stuff like that. It was a lot of them don't come from broken homes. A lot of them see this as an opportunity to pay for college. Maybe they come from economically deprived situation, but again, I'll save a lot of that for like, future podcasts. But yeah, like I've seen it firsthand. Like I've actually had a chance to actually be in the room and see how the porn is taped and how it actually works. It's really just, it's a business arrangement. It's crazy because I know you see the finished product and stuff, but when you're actually in there, it's really like, all right, action, cut. And then it's kind of how we're talking is how they're talking when it's done. It's a job to them, they're just great at it. So,
Well, the one thing that I thought was interesting was growing up in Los Angeles, it's hard to avoid it. It's everywhere. It's the birthplace of the porn industry. And I just remember it was a little bit later, during like my late 20s, that I started to get beyond just oh, these are women that must be really enjoying this and making, money and making a career for themselves, to like, okay, what's their story? Because these are human beings like anybody else. And then when I started to watch real interviews and read up on their real story, these are not glamorous lifestyles at all. I mean, maybe you'll get 1% of all porn actresses who are in charge of their own body. They're, calling the shots for themselves, not being exploited, not being taken advantage of, but everybody else is ruthlessly run through. And it doesn't matter if you're an A grade or whatever. And I think for me, that's where it was just kind of a check to look at, okay, how does this industry work? And is it just really sex trafficking, but in front of a camera? And because they get paid enough that they don't complain, but are, what's the real situation that they're in?
Yeah, I heard I think it was on Bob and Tom in the morning or whatever, one of those morning shows. They were talking about, it was actually in Phoenix. There was a guy running an adult video studio where you as a gentleman would go in and you would pay to make a porno video with one of their actresses.
Wow.
So essentially, the cops came in and said, "This is a brothel. This is these are prostitutes." And they said, "No, because the camera's rolling. This is the adult video industry." And yeah, it was just interesting to see that, the attempt to gray the area on that line. Okay, so where is that line when you're talking about the sex industry? I mean, it's pretty obvious if someone's under 18 that, that our society has said you're not supposed to be doing that. But when it comes into the prostitution piece, the day of your 18th birthday, you can go there and do it.
that's the loophole within the law. So if you actually pick up a prostitute, but you have a camera running, in the hotel or wherever, technically they can't take you to jail for prostitution because you're like, no, we're making an adult video. Who's going to say that you're not a producer? You're just an amateur, because there's all type of amateur porn out there and everything else. But that is the loophole. So it's fun that you brought that up because I've read plenty of stories on that and actually kind of did a little bit of research on that. And that really is the loophole. Like if you're smart, then you know how it is. But most Johns is what they call them. Half of them are married, half of them are young, and they clam up. They don't know any better. But if you know what you're doing, then it's just like, nah, it's the camera right there.
So this will be an interesting transition. So do you guys want to briefly talk about, because we're at about the 20-minute mark here, do you guys want to talk about also what's been in the news lately, churches and them being allowed to make political statements, potential political contributions, and how to overturn some of those laws?
Yeah, man, fuck them. No,
hold on though, because when you say fuck them, keep in mind, but I have to stand up for this. There are a lot of churches out there, and we can't just say F them, because
all
we
of
can't
them.
just, no, I disagree
they have
they
the tax exempt status, so that they, essentially churches are tax exempt businesses that, instead of trying to make profit, so you look at the Joel Osteen or these mega churches,
yeah,
dude, you can't say that, you know, the church down your street is any better or any worse than that douchebag, right? You can't,
It's
because
two
they're
different
all,
levels.
it's different. It's essentially a small business operation and a Fortune 500 company. That's the difference. They're both doing the same thing. They're both peddling, you know, fairy tales to help you go to sleep at night, but one's just doing it on a bigger stage. So when you start saying, "Hey, oh, you know, let's get them the ability to be political," no, that's bullshit. It's very clear to anyone that pays attention that the separation of church and state is key. If you
So
if you don't think so, then what you're essentially, I mean, most people that say, "Oh no, there, you know, we should have less of a separation," they just want their religion to be, you know, part of the government. When, you know, you look at all the Christians who are like, "Oh well, we should, you know, we want our legislators to be, you know, Christian and all that." Like, well, what if they're Muslim? Oh no, 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 no. Well, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to understand that you get special treatment because you're not allowed to do certain things.
so
And
here's what the issue is, though, if I can just point it up. So basically what's been circulating in the news. At first, I thought it was that the Republicans were trying to pass a law saying that churches can financially contribute to political candidates. That's not exactly the issue. The issue is that there's something called the Johnson Amendment that was initiated in 1954 under then Senator Lyndon Johnson, which basically says that if you want to retain your 501c3, which is a nonprofit status, then you are not allowed to politicize your organization, whether financially or basically you're not allowed to be a pastor in front of your church group condemning a candidate or
Mhm.
backing up someone else. So that's what the law says. Now, what's interesting about this is that what is being proposed isn't to allow churches to financially benefit a candidate, which I would be firmly against. There's no way. But I have to say, if a church wants to talk about a candidate, I don't think they should be affected
Take their
by
tax
that.
funding, take it
But
away.
why?
Why? Because you have a room full of sheeple that are going to listen and nod and do whatever the pastor says. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
Well,
but
well,
okay,
here's
but the faith component of that though
I
is
don't,
that if you
and
like, for example, if you have a church that's saying Donald Trump is sinning and this is how it is and this is somebody who's running the country, why should they not be allowed to talk about that? That's what I don't understand.
Well, let's look at the law real quick. So let me read this real quick. The IRS continues to make it clear that political campaign interventions by 501c3 organizations, including churches, is absolutely prohibited. Okay, under the Internal Revenue Code, all Section 501c3 organizations are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. Contributions to political campaign funds or public statements of position, verbal or written, made on behalf of the organization in favor of or in opposition of any candidate for public office clearly violate the prohibition against the political campaign activity. Violating this prohibition, yeah, may result in denial or revocation of tax exempt status and the imposition of certain excise taxes. So like you can't even say anything technically. You know, you're not supposed to say
Right.
anything negative or positive. You can't financially contribute, or just like Kevin was saying, you can't sit in front of your congregation and say anything. Like it's not even supposed to be in there because in the church you're supposed to be preaching about the Bible anyway. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the IRS rule says, and that's just what it is. So they shouldn't be talking about it. So
and it's a very poorly enforced rule. I
right.
mean, if you look at us, you know, the last 10, 12 years, especially, you know, really you look at the last 10 or 12 years and what you're seeing is a lot more information just due to social media being, you know, gaining relevance and widespread use in society. You get the videos are easier to watch. But what you see is a lot of people out there stumping for their candidate and all that. And it's, you know, it just, you have to have that brick wall between the two. If you want to talk about, you know, infidelity and lying or bad things, you're well to within your rights to do that. But you have to understand that when you take that political stance, you are crossing a line that is very clearly written, and you shouldn't be allowed to do it.
So, well, this is something that I thought was interesting. So, there's a Republican in Oklahoma, Senator James Lankford, and he made this argument that it kind of makes sense to me. He says if you work for a nonprofit organization, for some reason, you're not allowed free speech. You don't have that protection under the First Amendment. And that's where I kind of have to agree with that. Like, is it just because you can influence people to go and donate to a particular candidate that there's that kind of gray area that they want to avoid? So they say you just can't talk about it, period.
Yeah. I mean, so, okay. Yes, you have free speech, even if you work at a nonprofit. The nonprofit doesn't have free speech, the same as a business doesn't have free speech.
But the private industries do have free speech.
And everyone is pissed off about it. That's the whole super PACs thing, you know? Like all of a sudden, you know, money is speech. You know, that's what we're talking about. And especially when it comes to churches, but with nonprofits in general, they are awarded this right to not pay taxes or not pay certain taxes. And that comes with conditions. If they don't like it, they're free to be a for-profit business. They're free to start a super PAC. But if you want to try to reap the benefits of a nonprofit, then you have to follow the rules. If you're a church, you have to understand that if you're the pastor up there, you have an immense amount of power just given your position, given the belief structure, all of that. To jump into politics, specifically, you know, supporting or, you know, going against the candidate is definitely crossing the line. If you want to talk about the issues, you're obviously free to do that. But I mean, there has to be a brick wall between church and state. And, you know, what we see is 501c4s, I think, is the one that's allowed to, I think it's written something like a portion of your time can be, or a portion of your money can be spent, a portion of your time can be spent doing political stuff. So, I mean, there's opportunities to do it. They're just not as lucrative financially. So the churches all go, oh, well, I want the same rights as them. Well, no, you want all of your cake and some of theirs too. So you have to figure out what makes sense for you. And if you want the certain status, you have to understand that comes with limitations.
And I agree with that too as well. I mean, because when you think about the political process, anytime is a presidential election, what's one of the most important things that people want? Is he a Christian president? You know, does he have Christian values? You know, because it's automatically synonymous with the United States. Does he have Christian values? So the first thing you have to do is win the Midwest. You know, it's the first thing I want to talk to you about up and down the Bible Belt. What are your Christian values? Again, like Kevin's saying, you know, what if he's a Muslim, you know, of the Islamic faith, you know, but he's a Muslim, right? Mm-hmm. Again, you want your religion prioritized over others, right? Because
that's interesting.
Then why else would you be like, oh, well, is he a Christian president? If you always look at anybody who in the Midwest, or I don't want to single out this Midwest, but just mostly Midwest, but anywhere, what's the first thing you say? Does he have Christian values? That's what I want to know. If you just think about when Obama was going through, I think he's a Muslim. I don't think he's a Christian. I don't think you know, why does it have to be a Christian? It shouldn't even matter. But that's where it comes, where it's blended, right? So if you start talking about politics and stuff like that, then you can use your congregation, you know, for the wrong reasons and stuff like that. Because some of the people, not everything's all and everything. You can use you can manipulate your congregation.
So that's interesting, because the whole reason why this made it into the news is because Donald Trump said that he's going to promise to totally destroy that amendment. Basically, that if churches want free speech to talk about candidates, they should be allowed to do that. But you bring up an interesting point, because that could backfire, because then what happens, you know, say if I don't want to pick on Muslims, but say a Muslim church wants to discuss Trump, now all of a sudden they're going to be like, well, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, or the satanic church says, hey, you know, we love what Trump's doing. He's going to get us closer to our dark Lord and Savior. You know, he'd be, I'm not with, you know.
Right.
So,
no, that could get dangerous.
So I was correct. You were wrong. We can move on now.
Hey, just because I take a position doesn't mean it's my personal position. I'm just taking a different perspective on it.
I know.
Love you. No, sir. But I really do feel like churches should stay out of the political arena. There is no place for it at all. You know,
but you know they're pushing for it though.
No, I do.
They are pushing hard.
First thing, I think anyway, you know, just the whole religion thing, that in itself is a whole checkered situation too, right? I'm not going to say I'm for nor against it, but that in itself is up for debate. And now you're taking that, and then you want to take a political arena, you want to put them together, you know, because there's a lot of people who don't believe in religion. You know, They're spiritual, but they don't believe in an organized religion with the Bible and everything else, right? Because it's really weird to me, because there's just two things I want to say. So one, if you marry both of those together, right, you can kiss the LGBT goodbye, because the Christian church, they're not with that. You know what I'm saying? So now you're putting a whole group of people that's already, cast aside, and now you're going to manipulate your congregation, according to this book, to not like them. And they're already talking about stepping away from some of the laws that they've already enacted already, not religious, but from a political standpoint. A lot of people within Trump's cabinet are already talking about stepping away from some of the enforcement laws that protect LGBT, right?
Yeah.
So then you have that, and so it's just, and again, just to kind of highlight what Kevin was saying, like the pastor, preacher, whatever you want to call them, they have so much power, because they're the know all be all, right? They're the closest thing. They're the gateway to God, to people in congregation. I'm gonna talk to you because you received the word, you are interpreting this Bible, and you received the word, and so now you're disseminating out to the congregation. That's just way too much power. And then, like I said, you're gonna start paying off preachers and stuff like that. It's almost gonna become like lobbyists, in robes. So
well, that can transition into our next topic here. So, Kevin, did you want to wrap up with anything?
Yeah, fuck them.
Okay. So, one thing that I think would be worth a podcast, and I got into a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine, but I would like to bring up atheism and what exactly that whole movement is about, because I'm hearing some interesting arguments about that. And I just want to say that so I can sort of bookmark that. All right.